at 12:30, and wherever you are in the world, I hope that you are having a fabulous day, and welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show, where each week I bring you a different extraordinary guest who is here to chat with me and have a discussion about what does it take to create a mindset for success. Now, lots of things are happening in the world at the moment, and everybody's talking about something called the Great Resignation or the Great Reset. So today's extra special guest is the lovely Denise Meyerson. Hello, Denise.
Hello everybody.
And for those of you that don't know Denise, Denise is the founder of and director of Management Consultancy International and the Focus Learning Group, as well as being an incredibly accomplished woman, not only as a finalist in the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year, but also she holds a master's and a PhD in English. But that's kind of like the headlines about Denise. We're going to start today to get to know a little bit more about you, Denise, and everybody would be, I'm sure, really interested in your background of over 30 years supporting and training people in that training and development space. But how did you come to be that, Denise? Tell us a little bit more about your story.
Thanks, Michelle. And I don't know if anyone can see that the grey hair is fortunately very well covered after being around for so many years. So, Michelle, I stretch back, and I'm sure people can hear my accent, to South African roots. And I've always been passionate about education and training right from the time when many, many years ago, I was taken down one of the deepest mine shafts in the world. It was the Diepkloof mine. And at the time, it could still be the deepest mine in the world. And the mining group, which was Anglo-American, said, you cannot come and train anyone on our site until you've experienced what it's like to be in their shoes and walk their path. So down I went. I had my hat on and my torch on top and my boots, and we go down to the one shaft. I thought, this is so easy, I can breathe here. We go down to the next shaft, and then we go down to the third shaft, by which stage I was really struggling to breathe because there's not sufficient oxygen. And we're walking around, and I see this fabulous piece of equipment. It was shining, it was all wrapped up. It just looked, I was quite astounded by it. And I said, but why is it just sitting there? Why is nobody using it? And they said to me that the people who have to operate this machine cannot read or write. They put a thumbprint for their pay slip, and there is no level of education. I mean, you're talking back here in apartheid South Africa, disadvantaged education system. And from that moment on, I absolutely made up my mind that I really need to make a difference in terms of ensuring that every single person has the opportunity to learn and have doors open to them that might not be open previously.
Wow, what an amazing moment of insight and direction into where your calling is. And many people talk about purpose, but I think there's also many teachers are like that as well. They get some sort of calling. But your example is incredible, because with all of the different injustices and inequalities, to have such a experience, such a deep experience of it yourself, to see where, they can't read or write, so it's all by thumbprint. So it's pretty amazing. And I guess with such an insight into humanity, I think it's a humanity thing, where so many have so much and so many more have so little, and really struggle with that day to day. I think it gives you a unique kind of insight then into what does success mean to you? Out of all of the different people that you've trained and helped over the years and the different areas that you've studied, what then is what you have defined as success for you?
And Michelle, thanks for the great question, because I don't know if it's just one thing, because I think success changes as you progress through your career, through your professional, personal life as well. Because even today, and I do, although my story was South Africa, when I immigrated to Australia, I thought, I'll never see anything like that here. Everyone in Australia is privileged. Everyone leaves school, everyone studies in some way, and it's not the case at all, and very, very sadly isn't the case. So even today, for example, when I attend a graduation ceremony, or I'm talking for people who've graduated with a certificate in business administration or leadership management, whatever it is, I'm crying. They know. They've got to bring me the tissues, because I am so moved that people could put so much effort into their studies to transform themselves, to change their lives, the lives of their family and community, that it's, to me, that's just one example of what success means to me. It's just, I love it. Invite me to graduations. Make sure you've got the tissues for me as well, because from my perspective, that is a symbol of all the hard work that I've put towards helping people, whether they're learning in person or whether they're learning virtually, online. There's so many ways now of learning. I love the fact that there's so much that people could experience if they give themselves that opportunity.
And I think you've touched on a really beautiful point there about the success being one of those milestones, that education and learning gives you so many more opportunities in life. And for people that, can't read or write, or may have some of the basics, but learning more skills gives them so many more options. And it's interesting that a lot of those lessons and learnings, if you like, are actually so applicable now when we're talking about the Great Resignation, the Great Reset. When I'm working with clients and it's all about digital transformation and this and that, we're looking now at job descriptions where half of the role is done by an AI and half of it is done by a human being. And eventually, there may be no human being in that at all. And so helping people to understand that education and continuing to learn, nobody really has a crystal ball about what job to do in the future, but that ability to keep learning is what, I believe is really important to people.
I agree.
So with, all of the different accolades and the different backgrounds, I know that everybody is really interested in, and we saw that through the social media prior to the show, they're really interested in hearing from yourself about what would be your tips and your suggestions around building that successful mindset so that you can keep learning, so you can keep being successful and keep your job, your livelihood, your career going at such a great time of change.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many tips. I mean, you could have me on here for next hour and I'd keep going. But I think one of them for me, Michele, is definitely that resilience muscle. And it's definitely, to me, a muscle that has to be exercised, because, we look on social media and you see things that to me are really airbrushed. It's not just the images that are airbrushed. You look at these little slices from people's lives and you think, wow, how successful, they've got the car, and you just don't realize that behind the scenes, nobody's life is as smooth and as pretty as that. Everyone has their struggles, some more so absolutely than others, but there isn't someone who just sails through life as though nothing happens. I mean, you look at the royal family, you'd think that they would have all the riches in the world, they've got whatever they would want, and yet even in their family and in their business, their family business, there's struggles, there's challenges to be overcome. Not everything works out successfully. There are a few black sheep there as well. So, one of the suggestions for me, particularly when things get choppy, is that you just hope that there's more up times than down times. And you just, really want to think about every single activity. And I'm sure you give many to your clients and listeners about what can you do to get your self-talk and get yourself through those times when it's just not smooth sailing.
And I think that's a great point about resilience, and it's one of the areas that we start as well. Very much so, because in terms of mindset and people's thinking, it's helping them, exactly like you're describing, to reframe that there's actually in life good and bad. And that when they're looking at the false images on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok even, you know, that's like a choreographed view of somebody's life, and it's not reality. And so helping them to see that that person and everybody that they know actually would have good and bad, ups and downs, and that is what life is. It's not all one or all the other. And that you're exactly right. The royal family is a wonderful example, because you would think with all of that money and wealth, etc., that they actually are quite trapped and they have no real freedom. So they have great wealth, but no freedom with that, as opposed to somebody that may have not as much money, but they have a lot more freedom. So there's a wonderful expression about being careful about what you ask for, because I think that that's very true. When people are looking at their own resilience and building their resilience, and they're seeing, you know, somebody on Facebook that's lost 100 kilos, or somebody that's just run 10 marathons and, you know, not broken a sweat or something. It's actually that great self-talk that we were talking about, going inside and saying, well, for me, I did this today. And that's building, I love that example, building that resilience muscle in your own way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
And in terms of one of the things I was interested in researching, you've helped a lot of entrepreneurs and startups. So there'll be some people today that will be exploring that as an option, given that their work may or may not exist in the next few years. What are some of the tips that you might give for people in that space?
I think it's along the same vein, Michele. It's really being very open to possibilities, because, you know, sometimes you'll say, oh, wasn't he lucky? Wasn't I lucky? And yes, you know, some people can work very, very hard, and for the same amount of hours that they put into a day, somebody will be making a lot more money than the other person. And they say, oh, aren't they lucky? So there is, without question, an element of luck. But to me, sometimes people just see these lucky moments, just pass them straight by, as though they just notice them. And that, to me, is something that I would say to entrepreneurs, is you've got to be aware of, you know, is this my lucky moment now? Give it a try. Doesn't work out, fail fast, move on to the next one. But if you're not even open to seeing these lucky moments, I think that you know, just inhibiting your own ability to grow and be successful. And entrepreneurs will always tell you about that moment that's changed everything for them. And if you listen to the Afterpay story, you'll hear how he was taking his Rick Molnar, he was taking his dustbins out, and there he met the guy who knew how to set this whole thing up. So, like, from taking dustbins out, you would never think that would be my lucky moment. But I have seen people not grab onto where things could happen. I mean, just from selling our business now to APM, and APM is they're listing on the stock exchange on Friday, so they'll be Australia's largest human services provider. And that was through sitting at a dinner, sitting next to the right person at a dinner, having dinner talk. Who would have thought? All I concentrated on for the dinner was what I was going to wear.
And I think that goes back to that resilience, funnily enough, because people can sometimes think that working harder is going to get more. But whether it's taking out the rubbish or going to dinner, you obviously, yes, have to do the groundwork in the background. But then when you know your staff and you've got good products and services, it is actually taking that time out and doing the networking, taking the rubbish out, all of those things, because one of the things we work a lot with people around is that overwhelm and that stress, and encouraging them to take the time out, because if they don't take the time out, then exactly right, they don't get those opportunities and they don't notice those opportunities because they're too tired.
Agreed.
In fact, it's funny. I always think of the Angels and other bands like that say, you know, they were an overnight success after working at it for 10, 20 years or whatever it is. But I love how you describe it as noticing those opportunities and seeing where those opportunities lead, as opposed to that part reminds me as well of Yes Man with Jim Carrey, where you just say yes to everything so that you never know what that rabbit hole will take you down.
I agree.
And it's fascinating that you then sold the company after having a dinner, and I think that's also a different way of talking about the people that you surround yourself with. So none of us really know what's happening in the future, but you can start to surround yourself with the people that are talking about it and what skill sets they're looking for or they're studying and educating themselves on.
Agree.
In fact, the technology is so changing so much now that it is interesting how you have to keep updating and upgrading your skills.
And tell me about it. I mean, when I first arrived in Australia, I was so upset because I had to go and be requalified as a trainer. I came with all my certificates and the PhD and I was very proud of myself. And they put all that to one side and they said, you know what, that's not going to help you get your certificate for in training and development to get on with it. So it came down to earth pretty quickly. And I think that's another thing is that what I love seeing in entrepreneurs is humility. You know, the ones that are, oh, you know, look how wonderful I am, and aren't the ones that I see as having that success X factor. It's rather the ones that are very humble and acknowledge that they've had the rough rides, that they've had those lucky moments, that they've in fact also stared into what they call the valley of death, where, you know, the business is just hanging in the balance and something has gotten them through.
And I think it's really important, and that's so true, you know, to look at your own journey. And that's why I love having different guests on the show, because it showcases different people's journeys. And just like we were saying earlier about not comparing yourself, building your own resilience. I was going to say resistance, resilience.
That too.
That too. I think noticing the opportunities and the people that you surround yourself with is also really important skills and habits to develop. I hear time and time again exactly what you're saying, and for women especially it can be a little bit harder because there are still a lot of men's clubs and men's groups. But like you're saying, you were at dinner, I don't think it's impossible, because it's just the right conversation at the right time in the right room. So you have to get into that right room to begin with.
Yeah, and it's not always easy, and you get so many knockbacks. Oh my heavens.
So some people may be thinking, well, I actually, you know, don't really like learning, or I find it really hard to learn, or I find it hard to learn online. I'm much more face-to-face, and pretty much everything is online now. What do you think are some great tips as well for people that, you know, might be wanting to learn but they don't know where to start, or they're sick of Zoom meetings and so don't want to be learning anymore on Zoom? What do you think?
That's an advert for you. Because I really think that when you are in a quandary like that, just a bit of a coach, just to take that outside perspective, just sets you off on the road. And it's probably swimming around somewhere in your mind, and then somebody just helps you articulate it. And, you know, for me, there's no lack of things to study. There's a lot more that I want to do. But I understand for some people, particularly if you're in a job that you really feel just isn't giving you that satisfaction anymore, you're not deriving any sense of purpose from it. It's sometimes somebody like yourself just seems to categorize it, reflect back, you know, just set people on the path to where they need to be.
Exactly, because I guess having been around technology for a long time now, I actually just think of it always as a tool. And so you do have to work with some clients and some organisations around, because they're so in love with the tool that they forget about the people part. And the same with people. Sometimes they fall in love with the tool and they forget about whether it works for them or not. And I think that it's really important. And I actually got this from one of my very first jobs was in insurance. And they actually trained us how to do an insurance quote using a calculator. And being a young lady, I was like, oh, never going to use this, and what a waste of time, and bored. Being young, it was like, oh, yeah, boring old people. And then there was a power blackout, and they didn't shut the store, and people came in, and I had to do a manual calculation using a calculator. Yeah. And I remember that story too today, because I've worked in organisations now where the server's down and everybody goes home because they can't work. And I think that's so funny, because if they had have had backup systems and people could do other types of work, but everything now is in the cloud. It's not even in a server on the organisation. So I think yes, with training people to rethink and relearn, it starts with, well, what is the actual end goal as opposed to necessarily the tools that you're using?
Agree.
And I was fascinated as well about the UK Guild, that you were I'll just get this right, that
City of Guilds, yeah.
City of Guilds with the UK, that you're an honorary member. So what does that mean, and how did that come about?
And that was for helping bring city and guilds into South Africa, because they didn't have any qualification system. So in Australia, we're so lucky we've got the National Qualifications Framework, but there was nothing like that in South Africa. So in order to achieve the dream of helping people open their doors of opportunity, city and guilds came into South Africa, and we started training people in English, in writing their English exams, winning some prizes. So that's how they acknowledged me. So if I ever go into London, I can go along to see one of their offices, and they won't charge me.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's so, and I'm kind of going down this path for a reason, because I've belonged to some organisations over the years and needed to keep up continuous professional development CPD points. And then still gone into organisations where they've tested and that competency with that organisation has been fairly meaningless. And what it has shown me is that not every organisation or professional organisation is the same. And I think things like that guild is really good. So one of the other tips I'd say to people is to be really clear about the competency of the organisation that you do go and train through, because that's a great example there, where South Africa didn't have a system, so the city and guilds brought that in. And I know the other part about training that people are all interested and fascinated about this morning was the Lego, like serious play. How on earth did you get into Lego?
You see, you talk about a chance conversation, and somebody again said to me, oh, our company just did this thing using Lego. Have you heard about it? Lego Serious Play. So I hadn't heard about it, but I researched it. And as it happened at the time, there wasn't a representative who worked in Australia. So I said, okay, I'll be that person. Can I be that person? And off I went around the world, learning the methodology, which is a really powerful way of just getting people to talk in groups, express themselves around metaphorical ideas that they wouldn't normally talk about. You can use it in your coaching, Michele. I'll sell to you in your own show. But it really took me around the world running sessions in Microsoft on the diversity and inclusion program. We did change management in Coca-Cola, and we've done strategy work in other organizations, all based off the Lego Serious Play methodology. So we've been doing it now for 15 years in Australia. Wow. And there's still people who haven't heard of it. So I'm not happy if you're on this, on this session and you haven't heard of it.
I've come across it before, but exactly that. I actually think that any kind of way to take that playfulness, which is so important for creativity and reframing the mind and reframing how people see it, see things, is so critical. Going back to that childlike state is actually the best way that people learn to begin with. So I have seen Lego used, but it's interesting. I thought it would have taken off like mindfulness much more than it has. And I'm not sure whether it's because organisations don't see the real value in it.
Not always. To be frank, it's a hard sell. I think there's also a bit of a fear of what would happen if a senior executive walks past the room and just sees us all playing with Lego bricks. And then, is that a good spend of our budget? And so people get a bit nervous of that. But the outputs and the outcomes of the sessions are amazing.
It's funny because, design thinking and agile and all of those buzz and I've been through total quality management and all sorts of things like yourself through all the buzzwords of the day. But I just kind of think to myself, well, design thinking is what they used to call business analysis, but also the way to get into that state would be using something like Lego. And
it works really well with that. Totally agree.
As opposed to we all sit in a room and, go through the processes.
Talk fest and like 1% of the time is spent with, everybody contributing, and the rest of the time is one person talking.
Yeah. Well,
loud mouths win.
That's another conversation for another day.
Indeed.
If we're pulling all of that amazing insights and expertise that you have, what would you say quickly then would be the top 2 or 3 tips to learning and developing and preparing for that great reset or resignation?
Yeah. I'm hoping with the great resignation as well, Michele, that people don't confuse their job and their role just with all this chaos and this, really unsettled time. If they can sort of split that out a bit and then just assess the role for itself, because I have the sense that some people are confusing the two, and I wouldn't want them to resign and think, why did I leave such a great job, when they look back 6 months, 6 months later. And so just to realize we have been through tough and challenging times, and that shouldn't just be the only factor that impacts whether we leave our job or not. But I think it's also just being so open to different things, not shutting these ideas down too quickly, just giving a little bit of time to explore, because you just don't know where they're going to take you.
I think that's wonderful suggestions, because you're so right. I always think it's a little bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And my other great imagery with leaving a job and then finding yourself in the same situation in a different job is
different name on the door.
Different name on the door. I won't say which member of my family, but they were married to somebody named Karen and got divorced, and then married another person named Karen. And I kind of went, okay, we're just cycling through the Karens in this lifetime. But that can happen, and I think that's a really important point. Not just leaving the job because you want to change or you need to reset, but recognising what it is in you that's changed, and then working out what works for you in that job, and then what you can change about it perhaps to reset it. And if you can't reset it, then looking for something similar and having that longer term plan. But as we come to the end, how can people get hold of you, Denise? What's the best way?
I know that everyone says it, Michele, but LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIner. I've got 27,000 connections. I'm very proud of my connections. And then somebody says to me they've got even more. It's upsetting. But please, I'm active on LinkedIn, and please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with anyone. I'm very open to questions. If it doesn't take me long, I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. And if you were to talk to that younger you that was going down that mine shaft and thinking, oh, this is easy, oh, I can't breathe, and I definitely can't breathe, and there's no machinery working, what would you say to that younger version of you?
Hold on tight for the ride. It's a roller coaster. Just scream when you have to, and enjoy the downwards when you can.
Oh, fabulous. Well, Denise, it's been such an honour and a privilege to have you on the show today. And to everybody watching, I hope that you've got a lot out of the many different ways that we looked at the Great Reset and resignation, and suggestions that wonderful Denise has made around what to look for and tips about what to do coming forward. But thank you for so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Michele. Love chatting to you. It's been fabulous.
Thank you. And so for this week, it's coming to a close. From my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.